Without further ado, good morning, everybody. And my name is Rod Jones, and the privilege of being brand ambassador for Callbi Speech Analytics. After nearly 45 years in the call center industry, I must say that working with Callbi and the team has been one of the most exciting technologies I've ever had the pleasure of working with. With me today, my colleagues, ladies first, Henriette Potgieter. Henriette is our customer success executive. She works with our clients initially during the training phase, and then what we call the optimization phase, which is making sure that our customers and our users get absolute best benefit out of their investments in Callbi. And Corey Springett comes to us with several decades of experience in data analytics and specifically speech analytics. And in fact, Corey, I'm going to ask you, please, if you wouldn't mind, just after I give the introduction, if you just give some thought to the last 8 or 9 years that you've been involved in American and UK-based speech analytics. No names, no pastoral. Okay. The introduction of those who don't know us, there's Callbi. Callbi is a South African developed speech analytics solution developed within the Alpha Wave group down in Stellenbosch, where there are well over 350 employees. Most of them are data scientists and high-level technicians, and have evolved and developed Callbi. We launched a little over 2 years ago. I'm extremely proud of the fact that here in South Africa, we've signed our 80th customer. We're on track, I think, in the next quarter to reach the magic 100 customer users here. We're also expanding now into Australia, and in a partnership with DeepGram, we now add 30 plus languages, dialects, and accents that enable us to go global. So that's the sales pitch. Anybody wanting a full demonstration or more information, please liaise with us and we'll set it up. Corey, you've had decades in speech analytics and data analytics. Why don't you give us a little bit of background as to the previous iterations of speech analytics and how that contextualizes now to where we are with cloud-based Callbi. Corey, over to you.
Firstly, from my side to all the attendees, good morning. Thank you for making the time. Rod, it's an interesting evolution. You know, if we look at analytics per se over the last sort of 15 years, came out of the realm of being something esoteric and very specialized into the realm of self-service, and then eventually, general usage. Speech analytics followed a similar pattern, although the evolution's been a lot slower. So from a speech analytics perspective, up until 6 months ago, 2 years ago, before Callbi was launched, speech analytics was expensive, it was clunky, it was on-prem, it was complex. As part of our journey in developing Callbi, we wanted to break a whole lot of those myths. And the first myth was making it easy both from a cost perspective. It is fundamentally our belief speech analytics is essential to every contact center, regardless of size. We make reference to the American contact centers. Typically, business cases could only be built to sustain those investments if you had 500 plus agents to try and have a hope of having a return in a year or two's time. With Callbi, typically we see, and it's part of the discussion today, returns within 30 to 60 days from once you've completed the training. So rapid deployment, rapid value realization, but more importantly, seamless. There's nothing on-prem. It is easy. Integration is no longer an issue because we don't touch the telephony system. So effectively, we don't mind what call recorder the client is using. So we've made it easy in all of those aspects. But more importantly, we made it accessible for your contact center staff to be able to drive, own, and manage the environment rather than having specialized skills.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Corey. Now that gives us a bit of context about how we will be positioning Callbi into even the small call centers as well. Henriette, can I ask you to come in? You're working day to day with over 80 customers, users using Callbi. And the discussion today, we're looking at the business case. So if you could give us a high level, now for those present on the call today, Henriette comes to us with almost 25 years of experience in call centers, contact centers, in the BPO environment, in the captive environment, as the head of operations, and with a specific passion for quality and quality processes. Also one of the very few certified COPC leads in South Africa today. So we're very privileged to have Henriette. Henriette, from your perspective, as putting your call center consultant's hat on, the search for ROI, the search for the business case, no matter what technology we look at, the first question that comes up is, what is the business case? So why don't you give us your perspective of what you're finding in your engagements with clients and potential users as well? Over to you.
Thanks, Rod. Thank you, and morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining. Rod, like you said, and what we found, and the business case, and across all our clients we've worked with so far, is ultimately the business case is based on an improvement in your business. So what we're seeing, and I will break it down looking at the various types of call centers, but ultimately any business wants to have an improvement in something. So those key strategic goals or strategic things that any business aims to do is a reduction in cost. It is an improvement in customer experience if you're highly service-based, and it is then also just an increase in your revenue or in your sales. That's ultimately the things that you want to do. So breaking it down and then saying from a speech analytics and a Callbi and implementation is being able to connect those dots to say, what is it within my environment that is top of mind and key for me that I need to do? With Callbi and having access now to be able to tap into any part of any conversation any time of the day, it allows you to know what is happening in your business. Using that, then you can apply, and we can break down into very practical ideas, and I'll share that a bit later. But you can now use that to achieve that business goal. If you are concerned about cost, you see that there's a lot of leakage, a lot of inefficiencies, you're worried the cost is going up, you want to reduce that. You can use Callbi to understand where those inefficiencies are. It allows you to tap in. You are able to see where customers are happy from a customer experience perspective. You can drive sales. So that's ultimately the business case from anything in your business where you're looking to improve. And those are the key three things. It's customer experience, it's revenue generation, and a decrease in cost. That's the high level overall use case.
Henriette, in your day-to-day experiences now that you're working with users, Callbi users on substantial scale, I think the largest user is well over 1,000 seats, 1,500 seats. What are you seeing as the principal benefits that support that business case? Because we're constantly getting queries from potential customers saying, but what are the real values? What are the measurables that we can bring into the boardroom and get a no-brainer decision to go ahead and deploy speech analytics? So maybe you could give us, without mentioning names, just a couple of kind of use cases where it is manifested as either increased revenue, decreased costs, increased collections. Just a couple of heads ups on that.
Definitely, and Rod, I actually want to share a document, but just before I share that, I just want to give some real, like you said, practical, some of our clients without mentioning any names. So we've done a lot of work from a collections perspective. We have seen a very real increase in your promise to pay versus your right party contact. And that is by means of checking as part of your negotiation pathway, are the guys doing the right thing? Are they pushing for debit order? We've seen also in those clients where there is a big increase in the actual amount collected on the book versus the promise to pay. So that's one or two of our clients where there's a marked value increase in the collection side just by running those queries. Outside of that, we've seen across many of our clients, when we talk cost, and it's something I get very passionate about because previously you were just not able to identify if there's any dead air on a call. Using the functionality in Callbi to be able to see where you've got silences, where no one is talking. Now, dead air impacts a lot of things, but it impacts cost and it impacts customer experience most definitely. We've seen with some of our big clients where they've lost an equivalent of 20, 30 agents in a day that could have been productive, but it's actual time where someone is being idle. No one is talking. We can talk that back to cost. I mean, if you think about a cost per call minute, even if you think about the impact on customer experience, in an inbound environment, and we've had inbound environments where you're not able to track that dead air time if someone is waiting for someone else to answer back, or I'm placing you on hold because I'm waiting for someone to answer me, or looking for information or something like that. In our inbound or customer service environments, we have identified huge inefficiencies by running queries to check, is there unnecessary hold requirements on certain types of calls? Are there unnecessary transfer requirements? We've picked up with clients where there's 3 or 4 or 5 times that a customer gets transferred from when he comes in up until his actual query been resolved. So that's some of the real examples. Rod, I don't know if you've got any questions right now, or are you happy that I share? I just want to give an overview of all of the many different things that you can break it down into.
No, Henriette, I'd like you to go ahead with that and share that document. I'm going to come back to Corey in a few moments. So, Corey, if you just give some thought to that cost per call minute and the sort of savings that we are seeing customers experience, because those savings, when they're tangible, when it's money, when it's the ka-ching in the boardroom, that's the core of the business case. And then a little later, I'm going to also ask to come in. We're very privileged to have Mr. Paul Naidu on the call with us. Good morning, Paul. For those who don't know and have not seen Paul in action, for the last, almost 30 years now, Paul has been the doyen of sales training in the essentially financial services area. Paul, I'm going to bring you in a little later because I'd really like your opinions on how you'll be using speech analytics in the context of sales in your environment. So I'll come back to you both, Corey and Paul, in a few moments. Henriette, please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Rod. I will quickly share my screen. Do let me know if you can just confirm that you can see it, please.
Confirmed.
Okay. There's a document in front of you that we've compiled after thinking about and what we've seen across our implementations, where a lot of times our users and our clients struggle to connect the dots between, okay, I've got the speech analytics tool, I've got Callbi, I'm writing queries, but how does it actually now tie back in with what my aim is for the business? We've compiled the document and I want to show you the word potential, and there's a reason why it says potential. These are not the only goals or the only things. Callbi and speech analytics allows you to tap into any part of a conversation, and with Callbi it brings you right there in order to investigate and understand certain things. It won't solve your problem, but it allows you to know root cause, take actions, and to track. So if you think about that, the fact that now you've got the ability to know anything on any one of your calls, you can then start applying and think about any other goals outside of these. But I want to take you through the ones, and the high level ones we've compiled, keying it back into the strategic business goals. The very first thing is, like I've mentioned, any business wants to have a cost saving. Everybody, especially nowadays, is worried about cost. How can we reduce our cost? Now in here, and this is also a feature we've incorporated into Callbi, where you can go log and track your own goals. But here are some ideas of practical things you do able to have that direct cost reduction. The very first thing, and I've spoken about the dead air. But considering what is your current idle or dead air, silent time on your conversations, and being able to reduce that, this will also have an impact on your customer experience. Any customer who sits where they're waiting for someone to talk, I've phoned into many call centers before where the agent says, I'll be right back, and you sit and you wait and you don't know if they've dropped the call. So reducing silent time. This also ties in with silent time. So reducing the number of calls with silent time, looking at your average handle time. And I know this is a contentious issue, but your average handle time again is made up of your talk, hold, and wrap. So understanding where it is unnecessary talk, unnecessary long calls, unnecessary short calls, but also again those silences or after call silences that could be eliminated to have a more efficient conversation. Looking at your transfers and your holds. So that's the practical things to help you with achieving cost saving. And Rod, you've mentioned cost per call minute. I know you'll touch on it a bit later, but if you have these goals and achieve these things, you will have and see a reduction in your cost per call minute and in your cost. Next up, also just not direct cost, but looking at efficiency gains. If we talk QA, currently, if you have to QA every single in your business from start to finish, including your voicemails, your answering machines, every single call, you will probably need to have at least 3 or 4 or 5 QAs for every single agent. Now with Callbi, you've got access to every single call. At a click of a button, writing a query or investigating your silences, you can immediately see all of your calls, 100%, and then your QA resources now can spend less time going through the motions of listening to a call simply to check a list, versus now they can go in, focus on the outliers, focus on the things that makes sense, and spend time coaching. So the focus moves away from listening and checking, which a machine can help you do, to now doing more meaningful tasks and actually seeing an improvement in business performance. Next up is
Henriette, just while you're on
Rod.
that, if I can
Yes.
jump in very quickly. A couple of instances we've had where customers have been concerned that QAs are going to become redundant. My comeback on that, and I'd like your opinion on it, is that Callbi allows QAs to be upskilled to become, I call them insights analysts. But now you've worked with nearly 80 customers. Has that been your experience? Or if you'd like to talk just briefly about the type of skills that QAs evolve and develop using tools like Callbi. Back to you, Henriette.
Thanks, Rod, and you're 100% right. So I always say whenever I hear the concern, and it especially comes from the QA managers, the QA teams, speech analytics is not there to replace the human ear. You will always have instances where you still need the human ear to go listen, to check, to see certain things. Speech analytics is there to meaningful. What we've seen, and exactly what you said, where currently your QA assessor mostly is a checker. They listen, they skip, they go back, they click a button. Now you remove that, the mundane tasks. They now can start thinking more analytically. They start thinking about business impact. They can start focusing on where fails are happening. They can deep dive to start understanding root cause. So what we've seen, there's a definite shift, and a lot of companies, because it's a new thing. Speech analytics hasn't been implemented in every single company in South Africa and in the world. It's a new skill. It's where the industry is lifting, where now, instead of just listening without applying the mind, just saying was it said or not, you now need to start thinking much more analytically. It also brings with it the skill of being able to write queries as an administrator, understanding technology. 100% right, Rod. There's definitely, we will never replace the human ear, but it's more meaningful. The work they do will affect more change versus spending hours and hours listening to a conversation.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Henriette. And if you want to just proceed with the next of those value cases, and then I'm going to ask Corey to jump in, and Paul is on standby to come in as well with an opinion.
Thanks. The next two I'll just discuss together because we've just split them out between a sales environment where you look at revenue generation, or then specific to your collections environment. Both are actually exactly the same. The aim is ultimately that you want to increase your success rate to your promise to pay. So in a sales environment, you want to convert more sales wherever you make a right party contact. In a collections environment, you want to improve your pay whenever you get a right party contact. So again, using your queries, you can check across 100% of your calls. Are your agents using the right disposition or wrap codes? Otherwise, you're working off stats where actually it isn't what happened in those conversations. You can check if your agents are adhering to script and process, which helps you not be exposed to any risk when a sale is converted. Are agents using pitch phrases or the negotiation pathway collections environment? Similarly, also you can look at cancellations or high risk collections PTPs. So all of that ultimately will help you. You check the process from start, including dispositions captured when they get a hold of the person. Are they following the right process? Is the sale or the PTP compliant to reduce legal and compliance issues? You use those queries to look at that to improve those metrics. So that's your revenue. Then ultimately also your customer experience together with that, your agent experience. You can now see wherever there is a potential defect in service. You can run a query across millions of calls to pick up anywhere where someone indicated a negative comment, negative sentiment in terms of being unhappy, waiting on the line for long. You can track first call resolution. Any customer that says, I've been trying so many days for someone to help me resolve, you can now at a click of a button go straight to those conversations. And that will help you drive an improvement in customer experience. If you can proactively contact back when you see there was a break in service, you will ultimately improve the customer sentiment on that specific transaction. The last one then just is overall, and I think very much in a compliance regulated sales, very much financial insurance industry, you need to measure and make sure all your sales are compliant. Now you can use the machine, you can use Callbi to check and raise any potential call where the compliance is not there. Ultimately, that will help you reduce regulatory related complaints. Again, coming back to anybody who threatens going to the ombudsman, you can pick up that call immediately. As soon as the query is run, you can go there, you can investigate and proactively contact back, including your POPI when someone says do not contact. Run the query instead of relying on the agent to tick a list somewhere. You run the query to hear from the customer's own words, and you then use that process to mark your do not contact list. And that's the overlying goals, Rod. Back over to you.
Excellent. Henriette did a super job there. Thank you. I'm going to ask Corey briefly to come in, and that's back to show me the money. We've had lots of discussions about time saving, cost savings, etc. Won't you, from your experience, just touch on previous generations of speech analytics, where it runs to millions and millions of investments, in the context of this cost per call minute, which has become almost a currency in call centers as a means of either justifying expenditure in technology or as the core of the business case. Over to you, Corey.
Perfect stuff. So, Rod, maybe just to put things in context, typically Callbi, because it's South African based and our cost base is Rand based, we come in at a fraction of the American product. So typically a 10th to a 15th of their pricing. But to your earlier point around, the cost per minute, if you look at, let's say, an average contact center's cost per minute or cost per call is around 12 Rand to 15 Rand. Small savings make a big difference. So Henriette touched on it early on. If you could identify all of the silent time on agents and reduce your total silent time by 15%, those numbers stack up very quickly. Things like silent time, things like calls where the agents are mentioning words that are out of script. And to Rod's earlier point, I've got lots of great examples, but one that comes to mind, and was such a simple example, was in one of our early deployments of Callbi, one of our clients in the very first word cloud that was surfaced had the word postbox very prominent on the word cloud. We thought nothing of it. They got very excited, and it turns out they retired the postbox script 2 years ago. They deliver widgets to doors, and that was a 45-second wastage on a call that they thought was eliminated. The reality was that 30% of their 300 agents were still using the incorrect script and asking for the postbox. Mm-hmm. Those things, if you look at a 45-second saving on a call that's costing you per minute around R2.50, those are hundreds of thousands of rands a year that is lost there. And the return on something like Callbi is, they paid from that one Insight Pro for their Callbi licenses for the next 3 years.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to ask Paul to come in. Paul, are you there? You should.
I've got this
there.
unmute join as panelist.
There we go. Paul. Paul, why don't you briefly give an introduction? As I said, I've known you for many, many years and worked together on various sites together. Why don't you give a brief overview of the type of work that you've been doing, particularly in financial services, and then contextually how you would use speech analytics in support of your training interventions. Over to you, Paul. Are you there?
Unmute. There we go. Am I unmuted and clear?
You are clear. Thank you, Paul. Over to you for a few moments.
Thanks. Rod, thank you very much for this opportunity. As you correctly said, I have been involved in the sales environment for the last 22 years or so. And my particular market is financial services, where I work with call center agents and, of course, the field people made up of brokers and direct sellers. Now, the call center has been the most challenging, and the reason for this is that both the quality control person and myself have to listen to calls, and they do this sort of, let's call it appraisal, and I have to revise and make the sales conversation better, or change the sales conversation without interfering with compliance. In order to do that effectively, I can only at a time probably go over 50 calls. Now, if you can imagine the volume of calls that go through these call centers, and here's little Naidu doing only 50 of these calls, I would say that many a times I'm assuming things. Now with Callbi, I'm telling you, this is going to just change it. It's a game changer where we can have all calls analyzed as opposed to a manual analysis by Paul Naidu compared to a scientific analysis, and that too probably with every call. So that's going to be the real game changer. It's actually going to disrupt the way people will be able to sell. The reason for that is when we do this speech analysis on what I call the manual system, I'm basing it a lot on what happens during the call, like the disconnect, let's call it the antagonism, let's call it all of the things that happen where people get disinterested. And South Africans are pretty polite, and they do what we call the polite conversation. Please drop me an email, please call me again, not interested. But the reality is that we find in the speech of the agent, we pick up that the fear, the rejection, the lack of clarity, the lack of inflection, or how to win back the client with the kind of energy or enthusiasm you need, or the passion. So we pick that up easily. What that moves us from is what we call tick the box on the number of calls we've made as opposed to successful selling. I'm so excited about Callbi because now we can have all calls recorded, we can do a scientific analysis, and what we're going to put in then as the enhanced sales conversation will be based on science. And there's one thing for sure, if the little calls that I analyzed and improved sales in a small percentage, can you imagine the magnitude at which sales will be improved for every agent using Callbi? So pretty excited. I'm really happy that you've got me on this, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks, Rod. Thanks for having me, and great, and well done to the team too.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. And I think, based on our discussions over the last few days and this, over the next 2 weeks or so, I think we must set up a separate workshop where I'd like you to work with delegates on a webinar, actually demonstrating the use of speech analytics in the sales environment and perhaps contextualizing it to real results as well. So
excellent. Looking forward to it, Rod. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you for your contributions there, Paul. Corey, back to you. Your experience in the sales environment with customers using Callbi in the sales environment. Once again, to try and get that focus back to the business case, the cost justification. Have you seen significant, measurable, quantifiable results from customers using speech analytics in the sales environment?
Absolutely. And maybe a general comment, and I used to always call it a back of the matchbox calculation, is, and to touch on, little things make a big difference. So typically we see, reduction in costs by easily 10% and more, improvement in revenue generation easily by 10% and more. But some simple examples, rather than back to anecdotal examples, is I worked with a client about a year ago, and they again, sell widgets. And they used an outsourced contact center to sell the widgets, but they were owning the speech analytics component of it. And they couldn't understand why their promotional item was not selling. It was a great product, it was at a good price, it was competitively marketed. And the reality turned out is the agents were simply not mentioning the promotion. And that is very hard to, Paul's earlier point is, if you're doing random sampling and you pick something up that, oh, the agent didn't mention the promotion on the call, you know, it's hard to quantify. Does it happen once? Is it a once off? Does it happen all the time? Where, you know, again, that 100% visibility to say, does something happen frequently, and how frequently, and, you know, to what extent, and for which agents, is incredibly valuable and priceless in a way, because now you can see exactly where to focus your attention with little things like mentioning benefit statements not being done in calls. Agents who are not following the sales process, you know, a sales call typically has an opening, a sort of positioning, a benefit statement, and a close. Who's doing that? Who's not doing that? So that you can improve all of the agents to start displaying the behavior that you know ultimately leads to sales success, rather than having it as a random sort of roll of the dice and hope you find it.
Excellent, thanks for that. I'm going to ask Henriette to come in here now. It's a point we haven't discussed this morning, but the fact that Callbi covers the predominant languages in South Africa, English, Afrikaans, isiZulu, Setswana, and
Sesotho.
Sesotho, of course, yeah. Please, won't you just highlight how you use the vernacular languages in queries across vast quantities of calls? Because the point we haven't discussed this morning, and then let's look at the angle, the business benefit of that.
Okay.
Over to you, Henriette.
Thanks, Rod. I'm going to actually demonstrate that by way of sharing my screen, just to show how easy it actually is to write that languages. Rod, like you've mentioned, so we officially support South African English, and I always say that's already about 11 languages on its own, with all the various pronunciations and districts and areas and how people speak. So it's English, then it is Afrikaans, isiZulu, Sesotho, and recently added Setswana. Now, there's no need for you to go and write a query for each of these separate or different languages. You will write the query all with the languages included. I'm sharing my screen, Rod. Just confirm if you can see.
Confirmed.
Perfect. We've also got some generic queries built in. This is what you see in front of you is the query building area or the query building screen to add new queries, and this is yours to build out. So you can either use some of our existing queries as baseline, from there build it out further, or just start by writing your own queries. Just as a quick demonstration for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, to add a new query, you click the plus sign. In here, you can either start creating from blank, but I actually want to just show you one of our generic queries in the query library. Let's say, for instance, we are busy looking at outbound general, and I want to go see if my agents followed the outbound greeting, which is usually introducing who I am, where am I phoning from. In an outsourced environment, I'm phoning on behalf of someone. So you'll see here, just when I create, what you see in front of you is your actual query screen. This is the content of your query. The interface is very user-friendly. We've actually taken a conversational approach where you will add in exactly the words you're looking for. Was it said? Was it not said? Who said it? We are able to segregate between agent, client, or are you looking for anyone? And then you can just set some other requirements around that query as well. But back to the languages, and this is what I want to show you in here. Here already included, and there's no Afrikaans in here. I can add Afrikaans quickly. But in here, you'll see all those various languages, or what we call the variations or ways in which someone can say the same thing. I am, Mohalele, Ubuale, this is me speaking, etc., all built into one query. This query will then flag across all of your calls. And let me just quickly show you, just need to adjust the date because it's a demo environment. But if any one of these languages or phrases from your query is then matched, It will include and flag your call. So again, you just need someone to assist, or as you get more familiar with the language yourself, you will see how it transcribes, you'll refine your query, then there's no need to have different people looking at the different languages of calls. I just want to show you how that query would look. So if we open it now, it will show you exactly highlighted what was being flagged. Unfortunately, I don't have an indication of a vernac call right now, but you'll also see whenever they do any, and it is any of these languages, it will include the call in your query result.
I think another important point while you're still on this one, Henriette, is a question that comes up very frequently is, what is the time lag between the actual conversation taking place in the contact center and the ability of an analyst to have the results on it? I think it depends on the installation, but Corey, would you like to come in and just talk about the turnaround time? And then also, if you would address the elephant in the room, why don't we do real-time analytics? Corey, your call.
So real-time, and maybe as a general comment, is real-time analytics is not a factor of Callbi. It's more a function of, how quickly can you get your call recordings off the recorder, how quickly can you upload it, and then there's processing time. So there's latency in the process. But the bigger question is, if you know what happens on the contact center now, do you have the capacity, the staff, and the ability to intervene as it happens? And the short answer is most likely not. Real time is a buzzword that the American companies have put on to try and make it look sexy and appealing, and it's a tick in the box. But the practical, everyday implementation of it is very limited. For me, the real benefit of speech analytics is the ability to track and trend behavior over time in order to address it. And secondly, it's to then ensure that the actions you take to address these behaviors that you see, whether they're good or bad behaviors, stick. In other words, if I pick up that Rod has excessive silent time on his call, I address it with him, I can see that silent time going down over time or remains the same, in which case the intervention was not effective. So that is the bottom line around speech analytics, is the ability to track trend over time and then monitor the effectiveness of the actions that you take on it. Typically, from a Callbi perspective, for clients who want insights closer to what has happened on the floor, we have a number of clients that will typically upload intraday, so every hour, and within an hour of upload, the insights are available, the new dashboards are populated. So a typical 2-hour turnaround time. So in shift, you can then address behaviors if you spot them, specifically if there are incidents like racial slur or any profanities on the floor that you want to address quite quickly. You can get those insights within 2 hours, which, in our experience, based across about 80 contact centers to date, that is far more than sufficient in order to address the behaviors.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Corey. I'm going to ask Paul, if you wouldn't mind coming in again. Paul, having seen the comments both from Henriette and Corey and that bit of screen demo, in your experience as a, let's call it a sales coach, assuming that you had access to the scorecards and the summary cards, the analytics within an hour, what would you do with a sales team to drive increased revenue, increased sales coming through from the analytics? Over to you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rod. Thank you, Corey. I like the word real time, and everybody is pressed for time. So in that hour, we can pull out a group of, let's say, 8 or 10 people in a particular campaign and rework the sales conversation and measure the impact of that in the next hour. So imagine a call center doing 8 hours of work and you've got 500 to 600 people there. And by the hour, you change what they do based on the campaign or the nature of the campaign and how clients are responding to that based on what's going on, etc. And you find that everybody does well because you now can provide real-time real-time solutions as opposed to waiting to analyze data at the end of some month or when you're below targets and then trying to decide, well, we'll implement sales training. I was recently involved with one of the financial services places in Durban after all of these floodings. I was there on both occasions and we were doing what we call business bounce back. They had to contact these businesses who suddenly realized that they were underinsured. And you will be amazed how the sales skyrocketed through the roof based on the fact that we had the only information called flooding or disaster. Now, that doesn't happen every day, so you won't get sales skyrocketing. But what we did was change the sales conversation. Imagine on normal days, if you could have analytics that will help you change the sales conversation and start creating an environment where it is highly focused on winning rather than us trying to analyze information to see why we're losing. That's in brief what I can say about it.
Excellent. Thanks for that. It's always nice to have a specialist contextualizing it into your world on that. Corey, we're just about ready to start wrapping up. So I'm going to ask you first to contextualize back our discussions this morning to the business case for speech analytics. And then I'm going to ask Henriette, wearing your coach optimization specialist hat, to also do a parallel on that, focusing back the business case. If we've got to walk into the boardroom tomorrow morning and request a commitment to deploy large-scale speech analytics across the entire state, what are the 3 or 4 points that we're going to make? Corey, first with you.
Perfect stuff. Rod, thank you. I think, and Henriette touched on it right in the beginning, there are 4 pillars that a business case for speech analytics is based on. And those 4 pillars being: 1, it's the ability to help you reduce your operational cost. 2, the ability to improve your revenue if you're a collection agency or a sales center. The 3rd one, and it's critical, as we live in the age of customer, how do we improve the customer experience? But more importantly, happy agents make for happy customers. How do we improve the agent experience? And from an agent experience perspective, I'm talking about that granular insight as to which agents are struggling with what and being able to focus the interventions on that. And then obviously, we live in a regulated world, which calls are compliant, which calls we're not compliant. If they're not compliant, does what is missing warrant a redress. And those are typically the areas on which you build your business case. In all of the demonstrations we do, automated QA comes up. For me, automated QA is not a standalone business case. It's either there to aid in, 1, reducing your operational cost, to go your existing QAs can do 100% call coverage without having to increase headcount. Or if you're looking to cut costs, you can reduce QA staff and still get 100% QA coverage. Or it falls under compliance, where you want to now make sure calls are compliant, and that's part of our QA process. So typically it's to focus on each of those, and all of the use cases that follow on from that needs to support one of those 4 pillars to keep it focused on business. Often we see clients who want to do interesting, and I say it in inverted comma, analytics, but interesting proves no value, and if it doesn't prove value, then interesting is merely interesting. So it's to keep that attention on what is it that we're overarching wanting to do, improve efficiencies, improve revenues, and how does each of the queries we build out, each of the use cases we support in speech analytics contribute to one of those overarching sort of business case pillars that we are looking to address.
Thanks for that one, Corey. And Henriette, last but not least, I'm going to ask you to put on your operations director hat in a hypothetical 1,000-seat call center. You're the operations director. You've looked at speech analytics. You're going into the boardroom and you're asking for the commitment for the organization. What are the 3 or 4 points you're going to make in the 5 minutes that the financial director will give you the audience for?
Thanks, Rod. I think Corey has already said everything. So how I will tie it back in, and I am yet to find any organization who cannot work on an improvement on any one of those 4 pillars. So I would identify the key top of mind. I will already have some key stats, and knowing if we implement this, if we reduce our cost per minute by 10%, this is the cost saving versus what the Callbi cost per license would cost us. That's the very first. But then also looking at your customer experience. How much does it cost us to churn customers? To lose a customer, for a customer to go out there and have negative sentiment, cost us a lot more than needing to pay a license per agent. So that's, for me, that's, like I said, it's ultimately for every business to be different, but I am yet to see a business where there's not at least one of those pillars where they can make a huge impact, ultimately at the end of the day, on the company books. Books being customers, happy people, reduced cost, improved revenue.
Thank you for that, Henriette. Corey, would you come in as we just do a wrap on this? So we can thank our delegates for registering with us and participating. And a special thanks to Paul for your very, very valuable contributions. And I think we will certainly set up a workshop, webinar based, and we'll just examine what we can do with speech analytics in sales. There's a big question that comes up, but we don't do a sales pitch in these things. But the question has been asked is, well, so how much does Callbi cost? Well, we're not going to say how much it costs. But you might have seen some of our marketing materials. We say Callbi costs less per agent per month than a decent takeaway pizza. Now you can do the math on that. So it is literally a no-brainer when you see the business benefits that come through on the application of speech analytics in the contact centers. So from my side, thank you very much for everybody for attending. I will do an edited version of this, and it'll be up on the Callbi YouTube channel later today. Corey, your last word.
From my side, just again for all the attendees, thank you for the time. You know, the other one is the proof of the pudding's in the tasting, and from a Callbi perspective, without sounding too much like a sales side, but this is my passion, is, you know, we allow for easy pilots that is cost effective, that enables you to deploy it, try it within your contact center for 3 months. If it works for you, fantastic, you deploy it further. If it doesn't, then at least you know. So the advice is always give it a try. You know, the benefits is demonstrable, it is massive, and it can fundamentally change your business for the better.
And last word from the lady, Henriette, who you will meet when she does the training on your call center and your optimization. Henriette, your last word.
Right, I think I always end off by saying you've got nothing to lose. Give it a go. It's an easy business model. There's immediate demonstrable benefits to be seen. It is a journey to build out and upskill, but immediately already with looking at your silences, looking at the query library, there's nothing to lose. It's an easy in, it's an easy give it a go, and we are here to help you see the value.
Wonderful. Thanks, team, and thanks to delegates, and have a wonderful day and rest of the week.